Yes, I'm the founder and the first CEO of Sat7. I stepped down from that role 4 years ago and now take care of legal affairs, and I'm on various boards and councils. My faith journey begins, I suppose, when I was quite young. There was no faith journey, and I never heard anything about the gospel until my mid-teens, when I was invited to go to a boys' camp. In those days in England it was called Crusaders. Today it's called Urban Saints, which is a very strange name, but it was a life-changing experience for me. I heard the gospel for the first time and I responded to it. My whole life really began to change. I was doing badly at school, I started doing well at school, and every year jumped a grade and then went on to university. But I was never, because I'd never been in a church, I continued in the Bible class that was run by Urban Saints. And then one day a pastor came and he knocked on our door. My father gave him some verbal abuse because he hated the church. He thought it was full of hypocrites. He was very upset that I'd become a Christian. And he threw this pastor out. Well, I retrieved him in the road and said, what did you want to say? And he said, I'd like to invite you to my church. It's just down the road here. So that was in Crofton, a suburb of Orpington. And so the Sunday that I was going to go to church, my friends came round with a grass track racing bike. He said, we just got this new machine, you need to come and try it out. So instead of going to church, I went to a local grass track to test drive this new motorbike. And when my turn came to take it around the circuit, I came to a sort of dangerous bend on the far side of the track, away from all my friends, went off the track into a ditch, and I was thrown into the long grass, and I couldn't move. I couldn't move my legs. I was horrified that I'd been, permanently disabled. And my friends were calling out, "Where are you? Is the bike okay?" That kind of stuff. Eventually they came over, I got an ambulance and I went to the hospital. Turned out it was just severe bruising, so the next church I went for the first time in my life into church on a pair of crutches, and was later baptized in that church. I got involved in student work too, and started a Christian union at my local college. And then I invited OM, Operation Mobilization, who were just setting up in Bromley nearby, to come and speak at our Christian union. And they spoke to me, and I became interested and got the literature, started reading the books, went on a summer crusade. Next year went on another summer crusade. Next year went on another summer crusade. Eventually got involved in their ministry in Eastern Europe, taking Bibles behind the Iron Curtain. And then after graduating and working for a few years, at the age of 25, I thought that God would have me take a year off to work with OM. And I thought I was going to India, but in the interviews at the end of the conference, they said, we need someone with some publishing skills, and I had some publishing skills from my work with the student union in Beirut. And I said, where's Beirut? I had to look it up on the map. It's in Lebanon, which is somewhere near Israel, I think. So I went to Lebanon after a few more months in Eastern Europe. And I was just supposed to be there for 6 months, but that was such a wonderful experience, seeing the opportunities and the needs for sharing the gospel, initially through literature, that I decided to stay on another year, and then another year. And this month, it's just over 50 years since I took that decision to go part for a short-term missions project. So be careful. It is a dangerous thing to commit to short-term missions. I was involved in book publishing tracts, which were difficult to distribute in the Arab countries. Eventually, during the Civil War, we decided to go for a few months to Egypt to explore new opportunities there, hopefully returning within a few months when the Civil War finished. The Civil War went on for 15 years, so I continued on in Egypt, started a newsstand Arabic language magazine for young people that actually was read by over 700,000 people every month, and that was exciting. But 600,000 or 700,000 didn't even represent the population growth of 1 year in the Arab world in those days. So other methods needed to be employed. One night when I was walking home from my office in Cairo, my publishing office, I passed a night watchman and his wife and 3 kids. They were guarding steel and sand and cement for a building site right next to my home. And I'd seen them several times in the past, but tonight it was different. They had a TV set in the road, a little black and white set. It was wired across the road to a sympathetic neighbour's PowerPoint. And I just stood there looking in disbelief at this. This family had nothing. They lived on the side of the street, but they had a TV set. Why? Because once you have one, it's an endless source of free information, free entertainment, keeps the kids off the street, distracts you from the grinding poverty in which you live. And I thought, these people, they're never going to read a Christian book, a Bible, a magazine, and they're not likely to be able to listen to a testimony of a Christian because of restrictions on personal witness in these countries. But they were watching TV. So how can we use this medium to share the gospel in the Middle East? This was long before uncensored satellite television was even a concept. But it started me on the path of exploring television, although I had a great distrust of television.
Life Stories Worldwide is broadcast live every Monday night at 8 p.m. UK time. We'll broadcast live on YouTube, Facebook and StreamYard. So why not join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. UK time for Life Stories Worldwide. If you would like to contact us here at Life Stories Worldwide, you can. Simply by emailing lifestoriesworldwide@gmail.com or visit our website at lifestoriesworldwide.com.
You have to have a face for television, you wear makeup, you sit in front of an artificial set, you're under artificial lights, and you use this as a conduit for Christian truth. And worse than that, we make the implicit explicit. So the Bible doesn't tell us what Jesus looks like, but we're going to show you tonight what Jesus looks like in this movie. So we have to be very careful with it. As a medium, we have to mitigate for its intrinsic weaknesses when we can. So this led me on the path to producing local television programs in Egypt that we hoped we could sell, and we did, to Egyptian television and other television networks. Low-key Christian content, Christian values, and so on. And then in 1989, I was detained by the security and deported over human rights issues. I was doing advocacy for Christians who'd been tortured and imprisoned in the country, which was very difficult, of course, for my family. I had 3 children in school at that time, and my wife was very involved in local ministry. But it opened the door for me to work with the founding of a new ministry, Sat7, to broadcast Christian programming using uncensored satellite broadcasts into millions of homes across the region. And this was just the beginning. There were perhaps 1 million dishes across the region, but today 85% of 650 million Arabic, Turkish and Farsi speakers from Iran to Morocco have got satellite dishes, and it still is the only uncensored medium that one can use for Christian witness, and it's the only way that you're going to reach the non-readers who number several hundred million. It's a great way to reach kids and women in closed homes in closed countries, so very important. More recently we've gotten into digital media. We have online platforms similar to Netflix where we stream both live content in 3 languages and also video on demand is available through this platform. But still, you need good internet connection. You need to get through censorship through a VPN or something else. So while it's reaching millions, and we had 30 million views on YouTube alone last year from this site, we still have a challenge of dealing with censorship and literacy in the region. So we're working both satellite broadcasting and online ministries at the moment. And that, obviously, the digital platforms will become increasingly important as we move into a new era where we're going to see huge increases in opportunities with quantum computing, 5G networks, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. These are all converging to give us a whole slate of new opportunities to share the faith in that part of the world.
You've brought out a book about this whole remarkable story, Dare to Believe.
That's right.
And you start with that moment where you were deported from Egypt. What was going through your mind at that point? Were you questioning why God was closing a door for you? You had no idea that this would open a door for this amazing ministry, but how did you feel at the time?
There was a deep assurance in the same way that Joseph, when he was talking to his brothers about the way he'd been treated and sent to Egypt, you remember, he revealed himself to his brothers. His brothers were terrified about the implications of this influential Egyptian that had them in his power. And he said to them, what you intended for evil, God took and used for good. And that was exactly how I felt at that time. The only difference was I was leaving Egypt, not coming into Egypt. So, I had a deep peace that God was going to use this. And he did. I mean, suddenly, instead of firefighting 3 different ministry challenges and dealing with 100 staff and all the challenges of living in a country like Egypt, I had nobody to take care of. Even my family was still in Egypt. And suddenly I had all the time in the world to develop the concept and the policies and the principles for Sat7. I was out of a country where it was sensitive to communicate on this idea. I was suddenly in Cyprus with the freedom to communicate with everybody openly about the plans and pull together a coalition of churches and mission agencies to develop what actually became Sat7.
Late 80s, early 90s, we didn't have the technology we have today. How challenging was it to get it off the ground? I heard you hired a cameraman, but you didn't have a camera even.
Yes, that's true. Well, that was a funding issue rather than a technology issue. But yes, fax had just come in the same year that I was deported. We just installed our first fax machine, which was, groundbreaking after having to rely on mail or difficult telephone calls where you had to go to the post office and prepay for the number of minutes you wanted to talk overseas. It was very challenging. Yeah.
So how did you see God help resource all that? What miracles did you see? What breakthroughs to get it off the ground?
Well, I think the biggest challenges at that time were people who had a passion for sharing their faith through media and had any experience in television. There were lots of well-meaning Christians, but they didn't have the face for television, they didn't have the confidence to go in front of a screen. There were no Christian music, video recordings, they were all audio. There was no Christian drama to use. So we were really starting from scratch in a way. And the challenge was that people that we shared the vision with for a satellite television ministry, they looked at you in disbelief. They thought, yes, that's a lovely idea, but how's the government going to allow that? You'll be jammed. You'll be who's going to show their face on a television, Christian television service if they still live in an Arab country? And there was all these questions. And how are you going to fund this without foreign interference? Having to sell your airtime to Western televangelists. We don't want Western Christian programming coming in and giving the impression that Christianity is an import from America when it was birthed in the Middle East. So all these challenges were raised at the very beginning, and we had to deal with them. And one of the ways we dealt with them was to get together these different churches, leaders and others ask them about their fears and concerns, and then address them through a positive programming policy that would restrict foreign programming to cartoons, good movies and documentaries, but all teaching programming, anything that could be made in the Middle East effectively and efficiently. We would do that with local Christians in local languages, being culturally and religiously sensitive to the audiences.
It's very easy to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Life Stories at Lunch, to receive notifications of when we are live. Simply click the bell. If you would like to speak to us here at Life Stories Worldwide Radio, you can, simply by dialing +44 7943 550287. Call us now.
You talked about the technology and the financial breakthroughs. What about the breakthroughs in individual transformed lives? There must be so many stories. Are there any that stand out for you?
Oh, well, so many. I'll tell you two. The first one was on the very first broadcast, which was only 2 hours long, on the 31st of May, 27 years ago, almost to the day. The first phone call came, it was from a man in Saudi Arabia. He said, "I've just seen a lady on screen talking Arabic and wearing a cross. What is this program?" Because in his mind, to be an Arabic speaker was to be a Muslim. He'd never met a Christian Arab before. So that was the level of awareness of the Christian faith for much of our audience there. Later, I'll tell you an amazing story that came out of Iraq. It was from a man, it's from Iran. He was a carpet weaver in the holy city of Qom. And he was beginning to lose his eyesight. And he was very worried about this. And one night this is all in a very long letter in beautiful handwritten text. He prayed, he watched the Jesus film on our Farsi broadcasts. And he said, "Well, I'll pray to this Jesus and ask him to protect my children, because I don't know how I'm going to provide for them in the future if I can't continue my weaving business." And he went to bed. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning, there was a phone call from his daughter who was studying in Armenia. And she said, "Daddy, what did you do?" And he said, I don't know. What did I do? "A man came to me just now, all dressed in white. He woke me up. He said, 'Your life's in danger. Go downstairs and turn off the gas. It's leaking.'" And I went down, I turned it off, and I turned to the man in white, and I said, "Well, where did you come? Who sent you?" And the man said, "Your father sent me." And he sort of vaporized. And this kind of totally shook him. And his daughter and he and the rest of the family all became believers in due time. So God was using the broadcasts and the work of the Holy Spirit in a very special way in a country like Iran, which we consider so difficult, but today has the fastest growing Christian community in the world in per capita terms. So it's amazing what God is doing.
Looking back to that boy in Orpington to today, how does it feel personally to have impacted so many lives like that in such a challenging region?
Humbling. I mean, I don't feel it was me so much as God actually, like leaving Lebanon for Egypt. It was a war situation drove me there. Leaving Egypt for Cyprus, God did it through deportation. I wasn't like volunteering or going in the right direction necessarily. And a lot of what's been achieved has been through the sacrificial work of many of my colleagues and friends and Middle Eastern Christians, some of whom have given their lives for the gospel. For me, I feel more like a spectator of what God is doing, and I'm humbled by everything that has gone on in these last 25, 26, 27 years now through the ministry of Sat7.
What's your dream, your hope for the future of Sat7? You've probably exceeded what you ever dreamed of, but what's your hope for the future?
That we will keep to the vision and mission that was agreed 27 years ago. That is to make the gospel available to everyone in the Middle East, and secondly to encourage, support the church in its life, work and witness. It's easy to lose sight of that and the passion for it when you get caught up in all the technology and the details of programming and digital media and so on. So I do pray that we will continue to grasp these new opportunities that are coming from all these new technologies to do just that, to make the gospel clear and available to millions across this region, which has been so close to the gospel for many centuries, and also to encourage the life of the church. Some of these churches have been there for 2,000 years. We can easily dismiss them, oh, they're Orthodox or something, but the Coptic Orthodox Church, for example, has given more lives in terms of martyrs than any other church in the world. And they actually date their calendar from the massive persecution under the Emperor Diocletian, who massacred tens of thousands of Christians in Egypt at a certain period. So we need to understand these churches, we need to work with them, encourage them. In every church, whether it's a Baptist church or Orthodox, there are nominal members and there are committed believers, and there certainly are many committed believers in these different churches that we find that we can work well with.
Terry Ascott, it's been an honour to speak to you. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
My pleasure, my pleasure.